and welcome to Springfield Career Insights. Tonight, we confront a difficult but necessary truth. A truth that many people avoid, deny, or disguise behind excuses. There are people who keep saying they have bad luck, yet their lives are not shaped by misfortune. They are shaped by recklessness, by lack of discipline, and by choices that create the very chaos they complain about. At work, they cross boundaries. At school, they ignore procedures. In relationships, they start fires. In life, they act without reflection. But when consequences arrive, they suddenly become victims. They blame the boss, they blame the system, they blame their partner, they blame the universe, they call it bad luck. Tonight, we expose this pattern and we show how a lack of discipline becomes a source of self-inflicted suffering. To guide us through this powerful conversation, we are joined by His Excellency Dr. Godfrey Gandawa, President of Springfield Research University, continental voice on human behavior, and a leading advocate for reflective practice and disciplined living. President, welcome.
Thank you, Doctor. At Springfield, we teach that discipline is not a punishment. It is a protection. And recklessness is not a personality trait, advocate. It is a danger to one's future. Many people are not victims of bad luck. They are victims of their own unexamined behavior. They create confusion. They break structure. They disrespect boundaries. And when life responds, they call it misfortune. But the truth is simple. You cannot plant recklessness and harvest peace. You cannot ignore discipline and expect stability. You cannot break rules and expect a reward. A disciplined life is a structured life. A reckless life is a chaotic life, Doctor. And chaos always comes with consequences.
Thank you, Professor. President, many people blame bad luck for problems they caused themselves. Why is this pattern so common?
Thank you, Doctor. So, people blame bad luck, as you call it, because it is the easiest way to escape the discomfort of self-reflection. If you say it's bad luck, you don't have to confront your habits. You don't have to confront your decisions. You don't have to confront the truth that you played a role in your own downfall. Blaming luck becomes a psychological cushion, soft, convenient, and painless. It also protects the ego. You see, admitting fault feels like admitting weakness. Admitting responsibility feels like admitting failure. So people outsource the blame to fate, to circumstances, to the universe. It wasn't me. They say it was bad luck. It becomes a shield against shame. So for many, it's a cultural script. They grew up hearing adults blame misfortune for everything. Money problems, relationship breakdowns, missed opportunities. So they inherit the same language, the same mindset, the same escape routes. It becomes normal to say, I'm unlucky, instead of saying, I made a mistake. And then there is fear of accountability, fear of change, fear of confronting the patterns that keep it repeating. Because once you admit you caused the problem, you must also admit you have the power, Doctor, and the responsibility to fix it. And that is heavy for many people. So here is the truth. Blaming bad luck is a comfort zone. Taking responsibility is a growth zone. People choose the comfort zone because It demands nothing. No change, no discipline, no introspection. Just a story that makes them feel better in the moment, better. But the moment a person stops blaming luck and starts examining their choices, their life begins to shift. Clarity returns, power returns, direction returns. Because you cannot change what you refuse to own, doctor. This pattern is common because excuses are easy, but transformation is intentional.
Thank you, Professor. When someone keeps creating chaos, what is the first step toward recognizing their own role in the confusion?
Thank you, doctor. So, chaos doesn't reveal itself when a person is still moving fast, still reacting, still blaming, still defending. Chaos becomes visible in the silence. In the moment they stop, breathe, and ask themselves the question most people avoid. What is the common denominator in all these situations? That moment of honesty is the beginning of awakening, doctor. Because confusion doesn't follow people randomly. It follows behavior. It follows habits. It follows unexamined impulses. It follows emotional reactions that have never been challenged. So, the first step is self-observation. Not self-punishment, not self-hate, just the courage to look at your own footprints in the mess, to notice how you speak, how you respond, how you escalate, how you avoid, how you repeat the same choices, expecting different outcomes. Most people never reach this point because it threatens their ego, doctor. They don't. It forces them to admit the storm is not always external. Sometimes the storm is them. They are the storm. And that truth is heavy. But here is the truth. You cannot fix chaos you still believe is happening to you. You can only fix chaos you once realize that you are participating in it. Recognition begins with slowing down, with stepping back, with seeing the pattern instead of what? Of the moment. With accepting that accountability is not humiliation, it is liberation. Because the moment a person sees their role clearly, the confusion loses its power, the cycle breaks, the story changes, and responsibility becomes what? The doorway to peace.
Thank you, Professor. President, how does a lack of discipline turn small mistakes into major life problems?
Thank you, doctor. So when someone lacks discipline, small mistakes don't stay small. They multiply. They compound. They gather momentum. They turn into patterns. And patterns turn into big problems. A person who doesn't control their spending wakes up drowning in debt. A person who doesn't control their temper wakes up with broken relationships. A person who doesn't control their time wakes up with lost opportunities. A person who doesn't control their habits wakes up with a life they no longer recognize. The mistake wasn't the mistake. The mistake was the lack of discipline that allowed it to grow. Discipline is the brake pedal that stops a small slide from becoming a crash. Without it, life becomes a series of fires you are always trying to put out. You start living in reaction instead of what? Intention. You start blaming circumstances instead of examining choices. You start calling consequences bad luck instead of self-inflicted outcomes. And here is the truth, doctor. Discipline is not about perfection. It is about prevention. It prevents small errors from becoming lifelong regrets. It prevents temporary emotions from creating permanent damage. It prevents momentary impulses from destroying long-term goals. A lack of discipline turns small mistakes into major life problems because nothing stops the mistake from growing. You see? Nothing interrupts the pattern. Nothing corrects the direction. Nothing protects the future. So discipline is the difference between a stumble and a downfall, between a lesson and a crisis, between a setback and a disaster, doctor. That is why disciplined people look lucky. They simply stop small problems before they become bigger ones.
Thank you, Professor. Some people cross boundaries at work, signing things outside their scope, ignoring procedures, undermining authority. Why do they later feel victimized when accountability comes?
Thank you, doctor. This is rampant. People who overstep at work often operate from a place of what? Entitlement, insecurity, or a desire to feel important. You see? They sign things outside their scope because it makes them feel powerful. They ignore procedures because they believe rules are for others, not them. They undermine authority because they want to be seen as smarter, faster, or more capable than the system around them. But here is the twist, doctor. The same ego that pushes them to overstep is the same ego that cannot handle consequences. You see? When accountability comes, they feel victimized because accountability exposes the truth they were running away from. It strips away the illusion of competence. It confronts the insecurity they are hiding. It forces them to face the reality that their behavior was reckless, not heroic. And for many, victimhood becomes a defense mechanism. If they position themselves as victims, they avoid shame, they avoid responsibility, they avoid admitting that they created the very chaos they are now crying about. Victimhood also helps them rewrite the story. Instead of, I broke the rules, the narrative becomes, they are targeting me. They don't appreciate me. They are threatening me. They are unfair. This story protects their self-image, even when it is built on what? On denial, doctor. And here is the truth. People who create chaos often see themselves as victims because accountability feels like an attack when you have never held yourself accountable. They make consequences and mistake consequences for persecution. They mistake correction for disrespect. They mistake structure for oppression.
Why?
Because they were comfortable in their confusion, in the confusion they created, and accountability disrupts that comfort, doctor. The moment the spotlight turns to their behavior, they feel exposed And instead of growing, they retreat into the safest emotional hiding place they know. I am the victim. But the truth remains, you cannot be the architect of chaos and the victim of its consequences at the same time.
Thank you, Professor. Let's take a break and listen to our gospel song, Teach My Heart the Sound of Heaven.
The human condition, I've been listening to the noise of my own striving, trying to find your voice in the echoes of my fear. Some days the world grows louder than my spirit, and the melody of faith feels faint and far away. I wondered if my heart could still be tuned to glory, if heaven's song could rise again in me. The turning point, but then your presence rushed across my silence, a gentle note awakening something deep. It wasn't forceful, just familiar, like a sound my soul had always known. Teach my heart the sound and count. Let your voice become the rhythm of my days. Teach my heart the sound of heaven. Let your whisper be the anthem that I chase. Teach my heart the sound of heaven, until my life sings like you. Transformation, you tune my spirit to the frequency of mercy. You taught my soul the harmony of grace. Now every breath feels like a quiet worship. Oh, every step a note in the song you're writing in me. Oh, I'm learning to hear the music in your nearness, the melody that carries me through storms. And now I know the sound of holy resonance. Oh, it's the echo of your truth inside my bones. You teach my heart to rise again. You teach my spirit how to sing. Full declarations. Teach my heart the sound of heaven. Let your voice become the rhythm of my days. Teach my heart the sound of heaven. Let your whisper be the anthem that I chase. Teach my heart the sound of heaven, until my life sings like you. The prophetic moment, sing over me, Lord. Let your song rewrite the story of my soul. Sing over me, Lord. Let your melody restore what time has stolen. Sing over me, until my heart becomes an instrument of your glory. Teach my heart, teach my teach my heart the sound of heaven, until my life sings like you. Until my soul becomes a song. Unique sweat of love and heaven. I sing because because of you alone.
Welcome back. Let's continue with our discussion. In relationships, some people start emotional fires but claim to be the ones burned. What drives this behavior?
Thank you. Thank you, doctor. You can see your questions. This can be the same person. From school, from work, everywhere, even in church, now you are in relationships. You see? Some people start emotional fires because chaos gives them what? A sense of control. They provoke, they accuse, they twist words, they create tension, they push buttons. And in that moment, they feel so powerful because they are the ones shaping the emotional temperature of the relationship. You see? But when the fire spreads and the consequences arrive, the same person cannot handle the heat they created. So they flip the narrative. They become the victim. They become the hate one. They become the one under attack.
Why, Professor?
Because victimhood protects their ego from the truth. They caused the damage. This behavior is driven, doctor, by three deep forces. Number one is emotional immaturity. They don't know how to handle conflict without creating drama. They don't know how to express needs without manipulation. They don't know how to take responsibility without feeling attacked. So chaos becomes what? Their language. Secondly, fear of accountability. You see? If they were to admit they started the fire, they must also admit they need to change. You see? And change is uncomfortable. Growth is uncomfortable. Self-reflection is uncomfortable. So they choose the easier role, victim. You see? Third, a fragile self-image. Some people cannot tolerate seeing themselves as the problem when they are the problem. So they rewrite the story to protect their identity. They convince themselves they were pushed, provoked, misunderstood, mistreated. Anything except responsible. And here is the deeper truth, doctor. People who start emotional fires often feel burned because the flames expose who they really are. And exposure is more painful to them than the conflict itself. So they retreat into what? Victimhood. They cry foul. They blame the other person. They rewrite the script. Not because they are truly hurt, but because accountability feels like humiliation. In relationships, the fire starter, I'm calling them the fire starter, rarely sees the fire. You see? They only see the smoke when it blows back in their direction. And instead of learning, they hide behind the same line every time. I am the one suffering. But the truth remains, you cannot ignite chaos, doctor, and claim innocence at the same time. You cannot wound someone and call yourself the casualty. You cannot be the spark and the victim of the flame.
Thank you, Professor. President, what is the difference between genuine misfortune and self-inflicted consequences?
Yes, thank you, doctor. Genuine misfortune is when life hits you with something you did not cause, could not predict, and had no control over. You see? A sudden illness, a company restructuring, a natural disaster, a family crisis you didn't create. These are the storms that arrive without your fingerprints on them. You understand? Self-inflicted consequences are different, doctor. They are the storms you build quietly, choice by choice, habit by habit, denial by denial. They come from ignoring warnings. They come from repeating patterns. They come from carelessness. They come from refusing discipline. They come from decisions that were avoidable but made anyway. The difference is simple. Misfortune happens to you, doctor. Consequences happen because of you. Misfortune happens to you. Consequences happen because of you. Misfortune surprises you. Consequences follow you. Misfortune tests your resilience. Consequences test your accountability. Misfortune asks, how will you survive this? Consequences ask, will you finally learn from this? And here is the truth, doctor. People confuse the two because admitting responsibility is painful. Blaming misfortune is easier than confronting behavior. It is easier to say life is unfair than to say I was careless. It is easier to say I am unlucky than to say I ignored the signs. It is easier to say things just happened to me than to say I created this outcome. But the moment a person learns to separate genuine misfortune from self-inflicted consequences, their life changes, doctor. Clarity returns, growth begins, patterns break, and accountability becomes a source of power, not shame. Because misfortune builds character, but consequences build wisdom.
Thank you, Professor. How can people develop reflective practices so they stop repeating the same reckless patterns?
Thank you, doctor. All the time, those people that I have mentored or those people that stay close to me all the time, I'm always emphasizing the word reflective practice. People develop reflective practice the moment they slow down enough to hear themselves. Recklessness thrives in speed, quick reactions, quick decisions, quick emotions. Reflection thrives in stillness. A person must create space to ask the questions they usually run away from. What did I do? How did I contribute? What pattern am I repeating? What emotion was driving me? This is where transformation begins, doctor. Reflective practice also grows when a person becomes curious instead of defensive. You see? Most people defend their behavior before they even understand it. They justify, they explain, they blame. You see? They protect their ego instead of examining their actions. But curiosity opens doors. Why do I react like this? Why do I choose the same people? Why do I sabotage myself? You see these questions? Curiosity is softer than blame and far more powerful. Another key is emotional honesty. Emotional honesty, doctor. Not the dramatic kind, not the self-punishing kind, the quiet honest that says, I hate someone, I overreacted, I ignored the signs, I created this outcome. This honesty is uncomfortable, but it is the birthplace of maturity. Here is the deeper truth, Doctor. You cannot change a pattern you refuse to see. Reflection is the mirror that reveals the behavior you keep repeating. People also develop reflective practice by paying attention to consequences. You see, because life gives feedback. Every conflict, every setback, every disappointment, every repeated outcome. When the same result keeps showing up, it is not coincidence, Doctor. It is a message. Reflection is then the willingness to read that message instead of running away from it. And finally, reflective practice grows through accountability. Not public accountability, not forced accountability, personal accountability, the quiet decision to say, I will not blame luck. I will not blame others. I will not pretend. I will learn. That decision alone can break a lifetime of reckless patterns. Reflective practice is not a skill for the gifted, you see. It is a discipline for the willing. And the moment a person embraces it, their life stops repeating and starts evolving.
Thank you, Professor. Let's take a break and listen to our gospel song, Let the Light Speak for Me.
The human condition. I've been trying to explain the battles in my spirit, trying to find the words for storms no one else could see. Some wounds were quiet, some fears were hidden, and some victories felt too small to name. I wondered if my life could shine beyond my weakness, if grace could speak louder than the places I felt, the turning point. But then your presence wrapped around my shadows, a gentle radiance stronger than my shame. You didn't ask me to defend my story, you asked me to let your glory tell it. Let the light speak for me, let your brilliance tell the truth my words can't hold. Let the light speak for me, let your mercy be the story that unfolds. Let your glory be the language of my life. Shine through me, Lord. Let every shadow bow beneath your light. Shine through me, Lord, until my life becomes a lantern of your love. Let the light speak for me. Let your brilliance tell the truth my words can't hold. Let the light speak for me. Let your mercy be the story that unfolds. Let the light speak for me until all they see is you. Until all they see is you. His light.
Welcome back. Let's continue with our discussion. President, what role does self-awareness play in preventing unnecessary conflict and confusion?
Thank you, Doctor. So, self-awareness. Self-awareness stops unnecessary conflict because it interrupts the emotional autopilot. Most fights don't start with the issue, you see. They start with the reaction, a sharp tone, a defensive posture, a careless assumption, a misinterpreted gesture. When a person is self-aware, they catch these impulses before they escape. They think before they strike. They breathe before they explode. They choose clarity over chaos. So self-awareness also prevents confusion because it forces a person to examine their own role in the situation. Instead of saying, they misunderstood me, they ask, did I communicate clearly? You see the difference? Instead of saying, people are against me, they ask, did my behavior contribute to this tension? Instead of saying, everyone is dramatic, they ask, am I the one escalating the moment? This shift alone can save relationships, workplaces, families, and reputations. Here is the truth, Doctor. Self-awareness is the difference between reacting from emotion and responding from understanding. A self-aware person knows their triggers. They know their weaknesses. They know their patterns. They know when they are tired, irritable, insecure, or projecting. And because they know, they adjust. They pause. They step back. They choose a wiser path. Without self-awareness, Doctor, people walk into conflict blindly. They misread situations. They misjudge intentions. They create storms and then act surprised when it rains. They confuse their feelings with facts. They confuse their assumptions with truth, you see? They say their own lies and believe them. But with the self-awareness, a person becomes grounded. They listen better. They communicate clearer. They take responsibility earlier. They avoid unnecessary battles. They protect their peace and the peace of others. So self-awareness is not just emotional intelligence, Doctor. It is emotional prevention. It stops the fire before the spark. It stops the confusion before the misunderstanding. It stops the conflict before the explosion. That is why self-aware people live lighter, calmer, clearer, because they are not fighting battles they created themselves.
Thank you, Professor. Some people believe discipline is oppression. How can they understand it as a form of self-respect?
Thank you, Doctor. So, people think discipline is oppression because they associate it with someone else's authority. A parent shouting, a teacher correcting, a boss demanding, a system enforcing. So, the word discipline becomes tied to fear, pressure, and limitation. But true discipline, the kind that transforms a life, is not external. You see? It is internal. It is not someone controlling you. It is you controlling yourself. Discipline becomes self-respect the moment a person realizes, I am worthy structure. I am worthy order. I am worthy consistency. I am worthy a life that doesn't collapse. So self-respect says, I deserve a future I can trust. Discipline builds that future. Self-respect says, I deserve peace. Discipline protects that peace. Self-respect says, I deserve stability. And discipline creates that stability. Here is the truth, Doctor. Oppression takes your power away. Discipline gives your power back. Oppression limits you. Discipline strengthens you. Oppression cages you. Discipline prepares you. Oppression is forced. Discipline is chosen. When a person embraces discipline as self-respect, everything changes. They stop seeing routines as punishment and start seeing them as protection. They stop seeing boundaries as restrictions and start seeing them as freedom. They stop seeing consistency as suffering and start seeing it as self-investment. Because the most powerful form of self-love is not comfort. It is responsibility. If the decision to build a life you don't have to escape from, discipline is not oppression. Discipline is dignity. Discipline is self-care, Doctor. Discipline is the quiet declaration that your future matters.
Thank you, Professor. President, how can someone rebuild their life after realizing they've been the source of their own problems?
Thank you, Doctor. So the first step is acceptance without self-destruction. Not denial, not excuses, not emotional violence against yourself. Just the calm, honest truth. I created some of this, but I can also correct it. That sentence alone separates the broken from what? From the rising. You see? The second step is pattern recognition. You cannot rebuild what you do not understand, Doctor. You must study your own behavior the way a doctor studies symptoms. You see? Where did the chaos begin? What choices kept repeating? What emotions were driving you? What warning signs did you ignore? This is not punishment. It is diagnosis. You see? Then comes responsibility. That's the turning point now. Responsibility is not shame, Doctor. Responsibility is power. It is the moment you stop blaming luck, people, childhood, circumstances, or timing. It is the moment you say, if I created the problem, I can create the solution. That is the birth of transformation. And the next is what? Is behavioral correction. Now, rebuilding requires new habits, new boundaries, new routines, new standards. You cannot rebuild a life with the same tools that destroyed it. You must choose discipline over impulse, clarity over chaos, consistency over convenience. This is where the new life begins to take shape, doctor. And then comes repair, not just of self, but of relationships, trust, and reputation. You apologize where necessary. You take accountability without defensiveness. You show change through action, not speeches. People trust growth they can see, not promises they can hear. Finally, rebuilding requires self-compassion. You see? Not softness, not excuses. Compassion, the understanding that you are human, learning, evolving. You cannot rise if you keep punishing yourself for the fail. So here is the truth, doctor. When you realize you were the source of your own problems, you also realize you are the source of your solutions. Your life is not ruined, it is then ready for reconstruction. Rebuilding is not about erasing the past, it is about upgrading the future. It is about becoming the version of yourself you should have been all along. So you are not starting from zero, doctor. You are starting now from wisdom.
Wow, this is amazing. Let's take a commercial break and stay tuned.
At Springfield Research University, we don't teach to pass exams, we encode futures. Grounded in Education 6.0 and powered by STEMmer, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, medicine and automation, we deliver modular, sovereign learning across undergraduate, master's and doctoral programs. Explore our prospectus, where every curriculum is designed to STEMatize every discipline, dignify local authorship, and credential transformative knowledge. Be STEMatized, be sovereign. Here, knowledge is authored, not borrowed. Curriculum is credentialed, not copied. Every graduate becomes an architect of transformation. With 2 annual intakes, March and September, the path to innovation is always open. From the logic of automation to the soul of indigenous intelligence, SRU is where tomorrow is designed. Springfield isn't just a university, it's an epicenter of epistemic dignity. Join the movement. Study where learning governs itself. Springfield Research University, the globe is here. Where are you?
Welcome back. Let's continue with our discussion. President, how can people protect themselves from the temptation to act impulsively or emotionally?
Thank you, doctor. So people protect themselves from impulse behavior by creating a gap between the feeling end and the action. That tiny gap is where wisdom lives. That gap is where clarity returns. And that gap is where the emotional life cools before it burns everything around them. So the first protection is awareness. A person must know their emotional triggers the way a driver knows dangerous corners of the road. When you know what sets you off, you prepare for it. You slow down, you adjust, you refuse to let the moment hijack your judgment. Another protection is the habit of pausing, A pause is not weakness. It is a strategy. It is the difference between reacting and responding, between escalating and resolving, between regret and restraint. A person who pauses gains control over the moment instead of being controlled by it. People also protect themselves by grounding their decisions in what? In principles. I always talk about principles, not emotions. So emotions change with weather, principles remain steady. When you act from principle, respect, patience, clarity, responsibility, you avoid the chaos that comes from acting out of anger, fear, insecurity, or pride. There is also the power of environment. Impulsive people often surround themselves with impulsive influences. loud friends, chaotic spaces, emotional conversations, unnecessary drama. Protecting yourself means choosing environments that calm you, not environments that provoke you. And then comes the discipline of silence. Not the silence of avoidance, the silence of wisdom, the silence that says, I don't need to respond immediately. I don't need to win this moment. I don't need to prove anything. Silence has saved more relationships, careers, and futures than any argument ever has. And here's the truth, doctor. Impulsiveness is a thief. It steals clarity, steals peace, it steals opportunities. But self-control is a shield, and anyone can build it. When a person learns to pause, to breathe, to observe, to choose from principle over emotion, they stop being a victim of their impulses. They become the anchor of their actions. They protect their dignity, their relationships, their future. Because the strongest person is not the one who reacts. It is the one who chooses not to, doctor.
Thank you, Professor. Many people feel attacked when corrected. How can they learn to accept accountability without becoming defensive?
Yeah, thank you, doctor. So people learn to accept accountability the moment they stop treating feedback as a personal verdict and start treating it as information. Not an insult, not a punishment, just information that helps them adjust, refine, and rise. The first shift is emotional separation. A person must learn to separate who they are from what they did. You see? When you believe your mistakes define you, every correction feels like an attack on your identity. But when you understand that behavior can change, correction becomes an opportunity, not a wound. Another shift is learning to pause before reacting. Defensiveness is a reflex, fast, loud, automatic. You see? But maturity is a response, slow, calm, intentional. A simple pause gives the mind time to breathe, to listen, to understand the message instead of fighting it. People also need to replace pride with curiosity. Instead of thinking, why are they attacking me? They ask, what can I learn from this? Curiosity softens the ego. Curiosity opens the mind. Curiosity turns correction into clarity. There is also the power of assuming good intent. Not every correction is an insult, doctor. Not every instruction is disrespect. Sometimes people are simply trying to help you avoid a mistake you cannot see. When you assume good intent, accountability feels lighter, safer, easier to receive. And here is the truth. Defensiveness protects your feelings. Accountability protects your future. People who embrace accountability grow faster. They build trust quicker. They avoid repeated mistakes. They become easier to work with, easier to love, and easier to lead. Accepting accountability is not about being perfect, doctor. It is about being willing to listen, willing to adjust, willing to evolve. Because the person who can be corrected without collapsing is the person who rises without limit.
Thank you, Professor. Finally, President, what is your message to anyone who keeps blaming others for consequences they created?
Thank you, doctor. So to everyone, who keeps blaming others for consequences they created, here is the truth you must finally face. You are not cursed. You are not unlucky. You are not being singled out by the universe. You are simply living inside the results of choices you refuse to examine. Blaming others may protect your feelings, but it destroys your future. It keeps you stuck in the same loops, the same mistakes, the same storms you keep calling misfortune. But storms don't follow you by accident. They follow behavior. And here is the line that breaks the spell. If you keep calling it bad luck, you'll never fix it. If you call it what it is, reckless behavior, reckless behavior, reckless behavior, you can finally change your life. That is the turning point. That is the awakening. That is the moment you stop fighting shadows and start confronting the real source of your chaos. Because the day you stop blaming others is the day your life stops repeating. And the day you take responsibility is the day your life starts rebuilding. You cannot outrun consequences, but you can outgrow the behavior that created them. And that is where freedom begins. Thank you, Doctor, for having me.
Thank you, President, for reminding us that discipline is a shield, reflection is a mirror, and accountability is a pathway to growth. Your message tonight challenges us to stop blaming fate for fires we started ourselves, and to begin living with intention, structure, and self-respect. To our audience, if you are ready to replace confusion with clarity and recklessness with responsibility, Springfield Research University invites you to join a community where discipline is a life skill and reflective practice is a daily habit. Visit www.springfieldresearchuniversity.net to begin. This brings us to the end of tonight's edition of Springfield Career Insights. May your choices be deliberate, your actions disciplined, and your future free from self-inflicted storms. I am Clarence, your host. Good night.